At a prestigious military academy known for shaping some of the nation's finest officers, a simple morning routine was about to become a lesson that no cadet would ever forget. For weeks, a group of senior cadets had made it their unofficial ritual to taunt the academy's elderly bus driver, mocking his slow steps, laughing at his faded red shirt, pointing at his shaking hands, and treating him as if he were nothing more than a worn-out relic collecting dust. None of them knew that the quiet old man they bullied had once trained warriors whose names were etched into classified files. None of them knew the Commandant himself had learned to survive because of this same man, and none of them had the slightest idea that their arrogance was moments away from collapsing the instant the Commandant stepped outside and recognized the old driver. Keep listening, and which city are you listening from? And if you enjoy the story, please subscribe for more. Every morning at Sunrise Hall Gate, long before the campus fully woke, the academy bus groaned its way to a stop. It was an old, battered vehicle, its paint faded, its windows slightly scratched, its front bumper carrying the marks of a lifetime of use. The elderly bus driver stepped out slowly, gripping the rail with practiced care. His beard was white and neatly trimmed, his faded red shirt tucked into worn blue jeans, and his brown boots scuffed from years of honest work. He nodded politely at the younger cadets who passed by, though most didn't bother to acknowledge him. His hands trembled a little, age, not weakness, but he never let the tremor slow him down. Yet to a group of senior cadets, boys swollen with newfound authority, his stillness and silence were misinterpreted as weakness. They started small, snide comments, smirks, whispers, but day by day their cruelty grew bolder. "Look at this old fossil," one would shout. "Bet his first bus was pulled by horses." Another joked. They laughed like hyenas, circling around him whenever he stepped off the bus. Younger cadets, intimidated by the seniors' loud confidence, pretended not to notice. The old man didn't fight back, didn't shout, didn't even glare. He simply bowed his head slightly and continued walking toward the small maintenance hut beside the parking bay. But today, emboldened by an audience of early arriving cadets, the seniors decided to push further. They blocked his path, forming a half circle in front of him. One exaggerated his walk, dragging his feet dramatically. Another bent over, clutching his back, pretending to wobble. "Easy there, Grandpa," one jeered. "Need a cane." The old driver stopped, his eyes soft and unreadable. He clutched the bus railing gently, as if gathering his thoughts. His silence only fueled their amusement. One senior leaned in close, face inches away. "You're lucky we even let you drive that pile of junk. Bet you fell out of a helicopter back in the 70s. The group erupted in laughter. The younger cadets looked uneasy now, sensing a line was being crossed. Even the morning wind seemed to quiet, but the seniors didn't stop. "Come on, old man," another sneered. "Say something, or did your voice retire too?" Suddenly, the front doors of the academy slammed open with a sharp, commanding echo. Polished shoes struck the pavement with purposeful weight. Heads turned instantly. It was the Commandant, broad-shouldered, stern-eyed, the highest authority on campus. But instead of marching past them, he froze. His eyes locked on the old bus driver. His jaw dropped, just slightly, but enough for every cadet to see. The seniors straightened instinctively, but the Commandant didn't look at them. His gaze stayed fixed on the old man, a gaze filled with recognition, shock, and something deeper. Something the cadets couldn't understand yet, but soon would. The Commandant's boots stopped inches from the pavement line, his entire posture shifting from routine authority to something far more personal, something almost reverent. The senior cadets who had been laughing seconds earlier felt a sickening knot tighten in their stomachs as the air around them thickened. They watched the Commandant's expression with growing dread. They had never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at the old bus driver now. Slowly, the Commandant stepped forward, each movement deliberate, as if approaching someone whose presence demanded respect. The seniors instinctively snapped to attention, spines stiffening, hands trembling slightly behind their rigid posture. But the Commandant didn't acknowledge them, not even with a glance. His eyes were locked solely on the old man, who still stood quietly with one hand resting against the bus railing, his white beard gently brushing the collar of his faded red shirt. The old driver lowered his gaze, a hint of humility crossing his weathered features, but he didn't speak. It was the Commandant who broke the silence, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "Sir," he said softly, "you're back." The seniors blinked in confusion. "Sir, back?" Was the Commandant seriously speaking to the old bus driver like that? The Commandant's voice carried enough for every cadet nearby to hear, and whispers rippled through the small crowd forming near the gate. The seniors exchanged panicked glances, realizing they might have stepped into something far beyond their understanding. One of them, trying to salvage the moment, forced a nervous chuckle. "Sir, we were just—" The Commandant whipped his head toward him with a glare sharp enough to slice through steel. Silence! The cadet shut his mouth instantly. The commandant returned his focus to the old driver, his gaze softening again as he stepped even closer. I had no idea you were working here. If headquarters had told me, the old man shook his head subtly, his voice calm and gravelly. Didn't want the attention, just wanted to keep busy. The commandant swallowed hard, visibly struggling with the flood of memories that clearly hit him at once. The younger cadets watched in utter disbelief as their leader, the toughest, most respected man on campus, stood inches away from a bus driver with the respect of someone greeting a forgotten general. The commandant turned slowly toward the seniors, his eyes narrowing with controlled fury. "Is this what you were doing?" he said coldly, mocking him. The cadet stiffened. One stepped forward, voice shaky. "Sir, we didn't know who he was. You shouldn't need to know," the commandant snapped, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Respect is not conditional. It is not selective. It is earned through character, not rank." The seniors' faces went pale, like their blood had drained straight into their boots. The commandant pointed toward them with a rigid hand. "You owe this man more than respect. You owe him gratitude." The cadets were now shaking openly. One whispered, Who is he?" The commandant stared at them for a long moment, letting the tension thicken until it became almost suffocating. Then he finally spoke, his voice quiet but heavy enough to hit them like artillery. "This man," he said, turning back toward the old driver, "trained me." A silence so deep fell across the courtyard that even the wind seemed to stop. "When I was a cadet," the commandant continued, "he was the instructor who taught us discipline, resilience, and how to survive when everything goes wrong." The entire formation of students stiffened, eyes widening as the truth crashed down on them. The commandant's next words hit even harder. "Every medal on my chest exists because of what he taught me." The seniors' breath shook. The old man lowered his head humbly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "I was just doing my job," he murmured. The commandant stepped beside him, his voice steady. "And today," he said, glancing at the cadets with chilling disappointment, "it seems my academy has forgotten the very lessons you gave us." He exhaled slowly, eyes burning with the realization. "But we will fix that." And with those words, the ground beneath the seniors seemed to crumble. The commandant let the silence stretch, allowing the weight of his words to settle on every cadet present. The seniors shifted uneasily, their earlier bravado evaporating as the reality of their mistake finally gripped them. The old bus driver stood still beside the railing, his white beard catching the sunlight, his faded red shirt fluttering slightly in the morning breeze. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't show a hint of satisfaction. If anything, he looked almost embarrassed by the unfolding drama. But the commandant wasn't finished, not even close. He stepped forward, boots striking the pavement with controlled force, and faced the seniors directly. "You mocked a man whose shadow you are not yet worthy to walk in," he said, voice low and sharpened with disappointment. "A man who carried cadets across finish lines when their legs collapsed. A man who stood between danger and the weak when the academy was under crisis. A man who never once asked for recognition." The seniors swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the ground. Another clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to cry. The youngest among them stepped forward with trembling hands. "Sir, we truly didn't know." The commandant's gaze softened just barely, but his words remained firm. "Ignorance is not an excuse for cruelty." He turned toward the watching cadets, his voice rising enough for the entire courtyard to hear. "Every one of you," he said, sweeping a hand across the crowd, "is here to learn leadership. And leadership begins with humility." He pointed at the old driver without looking at him. "This man taught us how to lead, and you treated him as if he were disposable." A wave of shame rippled through the seniors. The commandant took a slow breath, grounding himself, and then revealed the detail that dropped jaws across the entire formation. "On my first field exercise," he said, voice filled with memory, "my entire squad got lost in the woods, supplies gone, communications dead, panic spreading. And do you know who found us after 36 hours? His eyes drifted toward the old man, softening into something that almost resembled gratitude mixed with anguish. "Him!" The cadets turned their attention to the veteran, now looking at him with reverence instead of mockery. The commandant continued. "He carried 2 injured cadets out on his back, fought off hypothermia with nothing but a fire he built from damp wood, kept a platoon of terrified teenagers alive through the night. And when rescue arrived, he refused evacuation until he confirmed every single cadet was accounted for." The seniors looked like they wanted to sink into the pavement. The old man cleared his throat quietly, uncomfortable with the spotlight. "That was a lifetime ago," he murmured. "Just doing my part." The commandant shook his head slowly. "A lifetime ago or today, it still makes you a better leader than any of us." Tension filled the air once again as he stepped closer to the seniors. "You think rank makes you powerful?" he asked. "It doesn't. Character does." The biggest bully, the one who had mocked the old man most loudly, finally stepped forward. His voice cracked. "Sir, what can we do?" The commandant's expression hardened into something disciplined but fair. "You will show him the respect he earned, and more importantly, the respect he never demanded." The old man sighed, but it wasn't an annoyed sound, more like a weary acceptance that life had brought him full circle. "They're just kids," he said softly. "Let them learn." The commandant nodded, but his voice remained firm. "And they will learn, starting now." He turned to the seniors. "All of you form up." Boots scraped the pavement as they snapped into a straight, rigid line. The commandant faced them with a final command that would mark the beginning of their reckoning. "When I give the order," he said, "you will salute the man you mocked." The seniors' eyes widened, breath catching in their throats. The commandant raised his hand slowly. "Prepare yourselves," he said. "This is a moment you'll remember for the rest of your lives." The seniors stood frozen in formation, their nerves stretched thin as wire, while the commandant kept his hand poised in the air, letting the gravity of the moment pulse through every cadet present. The courtyard had gone dead silent, no boots, no chatter, no movement except the slight rustling of flags overhead. Even the early morning breeze felt hesitant, as if the entire academy held its breath. The old bus driver remained still beside the railing, shoulders slightly hunched, white beard moving gently with each slow breath. His faded red shirt, worn blue jeans, and old brown boots seemed out of place among all the crisp uniforms, yet somehow at this moment he stood taller than all of them. The commandant finally dropped his hand. "Salute!" he barked. In perfect unison, the seniors snapped their hands to their brows, spines straight, chests rigid, eyes locked forward. But their faces betrayed everything: shame, fear, regret. This wasn't a routine salute. This was a surrender of ego, a confession, a lesson burned into their bones. The old man blinked, startled by the sudden wall of salutes aimed at him. His hands trembled slightly as he looked from one cadet to another, seeing sincerity replace arrogance. Slowly, cautiously, he raised his own hand and returned the salute, his movement gentler, humbler, but somehow more powerful than all their crisp motions combined. When the commandant ordered, "Lower," the seniors dropped their arms, shoulders sinking with relief. But the lesson wasn't over. "Front and center," the commandant commanded. The biggest bully, the one who had mocked the old driver the most, stepped forward as if his boots were filled with concrete. His cheeks were flushed, his jaw tight, but his eyes were broken with guilt. The commandant stared him down. "Speak!" The cadet swallowed hard, then turned slowly toward the old man. His voice wavered. "Sir, I apologize. I disrespected you, acted like a child. His throat tightened. "I'm ashamed." The old driver didn't respond right away. Instead, he stepped closer until they stood only a foot apart. He looked the cadet straight in the eye, not with anger, but with a depth of experience that quieted the boy's trembling. "Strength isn't measured by how loud you laugh at others," he said softly. "It's measured by how quietly you correct yourself when you're wrong." The bully's eyes glossed with tears he refused to let fall. "Yes, sir." The commandant stepped beside them. "Each of you will spend the next month assisting at the transportation yard," he said. "You will learn what service looks like without rank attached to it." A ripple of shock passed through the seniors, but none dared protest. They knew this was mercy disguised as punishment. The old man exhaled, shaking his head. "They don't need to be punished," he murmured. "They just need direction." The commandant turned to him with a look of deep respect. "And you, of all people, know how to give it." For the first time, the old bus driver's expression softened into a faint smile, small, tired, but real. The commandant faced the seniors again, voice commanding, "Dismissed!" The formation broke apart immediately, but none of the seniors walked away quickly. Instead, they drifted off slowly, casting lingering glances at the old man, glances filled not with pity or mockery, but admiration they couldn't put into words. As the courtyard emptied, the commandant remained beside the old driver. "You trained us once," he said quietly. "Seems like you're training the next generation, too." The old man let out a gentle breath, eyes reflecting the early morning sun. "If they're willing to learn," he said, "I'll teach them." And as the commandant walked away to prepare for the day ahead, the veteran remained standing at the bus door. Once unseen, now impossible to ignore, the rest of the day unfolded differently from any other the academy had seen in years. Word traveled through hallways, training fields, cafeterias, and dorm rooms. Cadets whispering the story of the old bus driver, realizing the man they once ignored or mocked had shaped generations of soldiers long before they ever set foot in a uniform. By afternoon, the seniors reported to the transportation yard for their first assigned shift, nerves tight, hearts heavy. They expected humiliation. Instead, they found the old man already there, leaning against the side of the bus with his arms crossed loosely, his white beard bright under the warm sunlight. His faded red shirt was wrinkled from the long day, and his boots carried fresh dust, but his eyes remained calm, unshaken by the morning's chaos. The biggest bully approached first, moving with stiff hesitation. "Sir, we're here to assist," he said quietly. The old man studied him for a moment, then nodded toward the tool shed. "Grab a rag," he said. "We start with the basics." And so they did. The seniors cleaned windows, checked tire pressure, replaced wipers, swept out the bus interior, tasks they had never imagined doing, tasks they once believed were beneath them. But hour by hour, their resentment melted into something else: respect. Every time they struggled with a rusted bolt or a jammed panel, the old man stepped in, not with lectures or superiority, but with gentle guidance. "Slow your hand," he'd say. "Let the tool do the work. Balance your stance. Use your legs, not your back. Don't rush. Precision saves time in the long run." And the cadets found themselves listening, not because they had to, but because his voice carried the weight of someone who had lived through far harder moments than a stubborn screw. As the shift continued, the old man shared small pieces of his past, not the classified missions or dramatic battles, but the lessons that came with them. He told them how he had once been the weakest cadet in his own class, mocked for being quiet, underestimated because he moved slower than the others. "They laughed at me too," he said, tightening a bolt with steady hands. "Until the day came when laughing didn't matter anymore, only courage did." The seniors absorbed every word, their earlier arrogance replaced by a quiet determination to be better than they had been. By sunset, the transportation yard glowed with golden light. The cadets stood beside the cleaned bus, faces flushed from work, uniforms dusty, sweat dripping down their temples, but something new reflected in their eyes: humility, gratitude, growth. The Commandant arrived just as the last rays of sun dipped behind the academy building. He walked around the yard slowly, inspecting their work before stopping beside the old driver. "Well," he asked him softly, "they learning?" The old man glanced at the boys, now standing tall, not with pride, but with earned respect. "They're trying," he said. "That's all anyone can ask." The biggest bully stepped forward then, voice steady but emotional. "Sir, thank you," he said to the old man, not the Commandant, "for today, for everything." The old driver placed a calloused hand on the cadet's shoulder. "Remember this," he said gently. "Strength with kindness builds soldiers. Strength without it only builds bullies." The cadet's eyes stung with unspoken tears, and he nodded. As night settled over the academy, the old man climbed onto the bus, settling into the driver's seat with familiar ease. The Commandant watched him with a mixture of nostalgia and admiration. And as the bus slowly rolled out of the yard, every cadet present, seniors and juniors alike, stood silently, giving him the respect that had been long overdue. From that day forward, no one mocked the old bus driver again. Instead, they looked to him not as someone beneath them, but as the quiet, steady legend who had shaped their future without ever asking for recognition. And in the heart of the academy, his legacy silently lived on.